The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the first in Cambashi's 2015 webinar series. And this series we're covering evidence-based business planning. I'm Christine Easterfield, and joining me is my colleague Tony Christian.
Hello.
Well, I think from what I can see on our screen here, I think just about everyone's signed on now. So I think it's time for us to get started. Well, last year we focused on a range of marketing planning scenarios in our webinars, but this year we're widening the scope to broader business planning scenarios. So let's quickly recap what we understand that to mean. Business and marketing planning is a bridge. It connects company strategy to action. It's the set of processes that convert statements of strategies for the business as a whole into targets, activities, resources, plans and priorities for organisational groups within the business. In the business scenario that we'll look at today, we'll consider a fictitious software company, Imaginary Software Inc., who are facing the problem of deciding which of two acquisition opportunities to pursue. We'll be using the Cambashi Market Observatories to support the business analysis of each of these opportunities and to provide a basis for comparison. So I'll start with a brief overview of those and then hand over to Tony to take us through the analysis and comparison process and to produce an actionable outcome for us. Now, do remember, if you have a question for us at any time, there should be a question panel available to you, so use that to send the question to us. And we should have time at the end of the session to address those questions. If there are any we don't get to, we can follow those up with email. But let's follow on now. If you've used the Cambashi Observatories or attended one of our earlier webinars, this session will be familiar to you, but I just want to make sure everyone today is on the same page. We research the global software market from different points of view using a common set of definitions and classifications. And the resulting observatories are a collection of data sets delivered as standard spreadsheets. These observatories fit into three groups: technical application software, economic data, and focused markets. We have 4 technical applications observatories, each providing a different view of this software market. Technical applications covers the software used to support design, engineering and creative activities. So this includes applications like CAD, CAM, product lifecycle management, GIS and visualization tools. In the economic category, we have the employment and the value-added observatories. These provide additional detail for the industry segments that invest in technical application software. And for some markets, we drill down or take a more specific view. This includes the tools for embedded software development, computer-aided manufacturing, and the digital simulation tools used in computer-aided engineering. So altogether, that's something over 2 million data points to help us understand the technical applications market. Then we use an iterative, refine, constrain, converge process to improve this data across multiple views. And today, we're going to be looking at data from 2 of these observatories, the Industry Observatory and the Employment Observatory. The Industry Observatory provides a view of spending by end users on technical applications, what we call EUE, or end user expenditure. That's for more than 100 industries for each of over 50 countries, and includes both historic and forecasted figures. And currently the outlook is to 2019. The other data set we'll look at is the Employment Observatory. This draws together data on employment from multiple sources around the world to give a value for the number of persons employed in more than 100 occupations for the same industries and countries as our industry observatory. So with that in mind, here's the scenario we'll cover today. In the planning cycle for 2016, in our Imaginary Software Inc. company, there have been 2 pitches for acquisition from regional managers. These are guys whose organisations have seen big successes in recent years, one in machinery and one in shipbuilding. Specifically, the machinery sector in the Europe and Middle East region and the shipbuilding sector in Asia Pacific. The acquisitions proposed by the regional managers for EMEA and APAC both look viable, as we've already looked at product fit, financials and the management teams for both companies. And today we'll investigate another dimension of the acquisition decision, the size of the potential market opportunity that would result from acquiring each company. But just before we start, a word of caution in the form of a disclaimer, just to keep the lawyers happy. Remember, this is an imaginary scenario, and the data used here is only to illustrate that scenario. The numbers are a mixture of publicly available data and Cambashi estimates from our observatories, which are changing and developing all the time. Okay, well now I'll hand over to Tony to take us through to today's scenario.
Okay. Well, thanks, Christine. So, as Christine described, our software company, Imaginary, has a decision to make as to which of 2 acquisitions to pursue. So, the choice is between a German company called Machinisoft, which has a leading-edge niche application for the machinery industry, and a South Korean company called Shipitech, which has a similarly leading-edge niche application for the shipbuilding industry. For all sorts of reasons, not least cost, management bandwidth and risk, it's only feasible to pursue one of them. So I'm going to play the role of the marketing person charged by management with developing some initial quantitative analyses of these 2 opportunities. For Imaginary, this is potentially a major decision because it will have a huge influence on the future direction of our existing business. So our management team is keen to avoid the common situation where the decision becomes a function of the sheer enthusiasm of the champion. That means that I need to take a reasonably detailed look at the markets for each company to take to the management team. The decision is, of course, going to be multidimensional, but for today's short session we'll simplify things a bit by assuming that the characteristics of the target companies match closely so that we can achieve a useful first analysis within the timescale of the webinar. So I'm thinking here of characteristics like them being a similar size that's affordable for our $10 million company, so maybe a few $1 million each in revenues, and that today a high proportion, let's say over 70% of their business is focused mainly in their local markets. Now, the business cases submitted by the EMEA and APAC regional managers that are championing the acquisitions include, as we would expect, pretty ambitious expansion scenarios. Firstly, there are initial estimates of the likely sales growth in their current sectors when integrated with our products. And then second, the anticipated increase in sales of our own products by association with the acquired ones. And in Machinisoft's case, the business growth proposals also include addressing adjacent sectors in the machinery industry. Each company has also provided estimates of the share of the technical applications wallet that it has in a typical customer. So that means that we can use the overall market numbers as a proxy for the opportunity for each company, because the opportunities will be roughly the same shape in terms of both relative scale and global distribution as the overall market, and our team can scale the numbers by those share of wallet estimates. So what I'm going to do is start by looking at the machinery industry overall and then refine that analysis to focus on the real opportunity in the subsectors that Machinisoft, I beg your pardon, has the potential to address. And then I'll do the same for the shipbuilding sector, for Shippisoft, before trying to reach some initial conclusions about the opportunities for each. So, this is the total global market for technical applications in the machinery sector. As Christine said, the chart's from the Cambashi Industry Observatory, and it shows end-user expenditure, EUE, on technical application software in the machinery sector by country in 2014. As we might expect, the largest spenders on technical application software in machinery are the US, Japan and Germany, and as in many sectors, we can see here China is also a significant player. Since Machinisoft is a German company, it has a good home market, which is a point for us to note. Of course, future growth is an important factor in looking at the market, and as Christine mentioned earlier, the observatory data sets provide estimates of growth looking 5 years ahead. So let's focus specifically on Machinisoft's home market in Germany. So here, I've asked the Industry Observatory to give me machinery in Germany and asked for the market size for 2014 to 2019. So on the left here, we see the $473 million figure for 2014 that we saw in the previous chart, and the orange line shows me the year-on-year growth as a percentage against the left-hand percent scale there. While there's a slowing in the growth rate out to 2019, it still looks healthy. But now let's add in the other three countries that have the largest spending on tech apps for machinery. Here's the US, here's Japan, and here's China. So while China is the smallest of the big four markets, the forecast growth rate is the highest, which should give rise to new opportunities in a less mature market. So far so good, but we've been looking at the size and split of spending on tech apps in the overall machinery market, and while a useful high-level perspective, we really need more detail for our acquisition decision because Machinisoft's application is particularly targeted at specialised analysis and kinetic simulation of lifting and handling equipment. So, for our next step, let's have a look at the subsectors that comprise the overall machinery industry. And here we are. In this chart, we can see each of the 16 subsectors that make up machinery and the worldwide spend on technical applications for each of those subsectors. We said that Machinisoft's application is currently focused on lifting and handling equipment. There we go. And we can see that this sector has a worldwide spend on technical applications of a bit over 180 million US dollars. So this sets the overall context for assessing the opportunity based on the company's estimates of their share of technical applications wallet. Now on this chart, I've now added the 5-year growth for each subsector. So the outlook for the core lifting and handling equipment market is growth to over $250 million by 2019. Now earlier we said that as part of the business case for the acquisition of Machinisoft, our EMEA regional manager has proposed some product development that would also enable the application to achieve a leading position in the manufacture of machinery for, first of all, mining, quarrying and construction, and secondly, agricultural and forestry machinery. These two sectors, as we can see here, would add just over $200 million to the total current market size, and based on the market forecasts, over 270 million by 2019. So if this proposition is correct, with the same share of wallet as in lifting and handling, expanding into these sectors would more than double the potential market. On the other side of the business case, at this stage we would have to trust the software developers, if we do, on the cost estimates for the development needed to do this, of course. Well, so far we've looked at 6 or 7 charts, and there are quite a few more to come. So I should probably explain that to create these charts, I've used the Industry Observatory main data table, which has over 160,000 values in it, as a source for an Excel pivot table, and from that generated the charts. In fact, since the data sets are standard Excel files, albeit rather large ones, you can export the data into other business intelligence systems to perform analysis there as well. But now, for a user like me who can just about manage to generate the more simple pivot table outputs, there's a great new dashboard user interface that makes the observatories very fast and really easy to use. So I can't really use a dashboard today in the interest of keeping the charts readable, but it might be worth just I'll take a quick diversion just to show you how those work. So I've got a link here into the industry observatory with a beta version of the dashboards. And you can see here that up here the yellow boxes give us the filters of country or region, industry, year and currency. And then the top level industry sectors are along here. We get a pie chart showing us the split between industries for the chosen country, in this case Hungary. And here we've got the subsectors for the chosen industry sector, automotive, which is also highlighted over here. So this is telling me that the technical applications market in Hungary for 2014 is a little over $42 million against a worldwide total of about 17.1 billion. So if I want to change things here, I can select the country filter, and here we have all of the countries that are in the industry observatory together with a worldwide view if you want, or an Americas or an APAC or an EMEA view. So we could perhaps, let's select, for example, Belgium. So we see all the numbers change to give us the picture for automotive in Belgium. And since we're looking at machinery at the moment, let's change this, and here we have the high-level industry sectors. Let's ask it for machinery, and then we get the 16 subsectors for machinery that we've already seen in our analysis. Machinery highlighted in the list here, and all the numbers updated to show that. So just thought it might be worth just showing you that because that gives us a really neat way of quickly looking at industry observatory data. But I'll close that now. I won't save my edits, and we'll go back to our pivot table generated, this time worldwide subsector view of the machinery industry, and the subsectors that we talked about that are of interest, namely the main one, lifting and handling equipment, and the two potential expansion sectors of machinery for mining, quarrying and construction, and agricultural and forestry machinery. So our next step should be to look at these subsectors in the main countries of interest. So here's Machinisoft's home market, Germany. We can see that the size of the two new sectors is rather limited here. So the proposition to invest in development to expand into those sectors is really going to depend on other countries. We can see here it would be great if the subsector called motors and electricity distribution apparatus, or indeed that for machine tools, were addressable, but they're rather beyond the potential scope of the application. But the other sectors that I might make a note to investigate further are those called other general purpose machinery and other special purpose machinery. They look very significant. Let's have a look at the US. So here's the picture there. The biggest addressable opportunity is in mining, quarrying and construction, but the agricultural and forestry area is significant as well. And we also, the core market of lifting and handling is pretty good. And we can also see again that other general purpose and other special purpose machinery are both large subsectors. What about Japan? Well, similar picture, reasonable scale in the addressable sectors, and again large in that other general purpose and other special purpose. And finally, what about China? Well, good market in lifting and handling equipment, our core sector, and the other two addressable sectors are reasonable too. And once again, the other general purpose and other special purpose machineries sectors feature strongly. So I'm definitely going to suggest to look into those. In fact, they both cover quite a large number of activities. So if the general purpose machinery covers this whole list of activities here, and special purpose machinery, that list there. So both lists quite extensive, so yes, definitely worth a look to see whether any of those subsectors can be addressed easily. The final thing that I want to do for this high-level look at Machinisoft's potential market is to look beyond the big four countries that we focused on so far. So here they are again, showing current market and growth, but only in the three addressable subsectors this time. So we've seen that the total spending on technical applications in 2014 worldwide for the core lifting and handling machinery sector was $183 million. And that of this, shown here in the blue columns, we've got Germany representing 26, the US 23 million, Japan 21 million, and China actually second largest at 24 million. So the total for the four main markets is $94 million. So where's the rest? Well, what I've done here is run a filter on the machinery sector data to show me other countries with a technical application spend in lifting and handling machinery of greater than $4 million US. And this is the result on the same scale as the main countries. So, but since they're smaller, I'll just increase the scale a bit so that we can see it more clearly. So we've got South Korea at about $6.5 million, France at around 9.5, Netherlands at 5.5, UK at 5, and India at 4.5. And we can also see the other potentially addressable sector picture there as well. So three of those markets, France, the Netherlands and UK, are close to Machinisoft's home market, which is good from a resource efficiency point of view. And we could, of course, go on to look at the other subsectors in those countries, but you're probably saturated with machinery industry charts by now, so let's try to set out some high-level findings. So we've investigated the overall size of the worldwide market for technical applications in lifting and handling and found it to be a little over $180 million. We've seen that over 50% is in the big four countries, Germany, US, Japan and China, with another 11% in France, Netherlands and UK. If the product can be modified to address the two proposed adjacent markets of mining, quarrying and construction machinery and agricultural and forestry machinery, we would double the potential market. However, we noted that the US is key for that. So we can address the US from our own offices and Germany plus the smaller European ones from Machinisoft's space in Europe, supported perhaps by our own presence there in the form of our Netherlands office. But what to do about Asia? It looks as though China has the best potential, both in terms of growth of lifting and handling machinery and especially in the two adjacent markets. So we should consider either establishing a new presence in Beijing or perhaps moving our own Singapore office. Finally, we've seen that the big four countries have a substantial spend on technical applications in those sectors called other general purpose and other special purpose machinery. And there are a wide range of activities in there, so that certainly warrants a deeper investigation. So let's turn to the shipbuilding scenario. In the interest of time, I'll accelerate the analysis a bit here, but the high-level industry into which shipbuilding falls is the transportation sector. Excuse me. So let's have a look at that worldwide. Here's the picture of spending on technical applications in transportation by country, again using the Industry Observatory. We can see that the total worldwide spend in transportation is a little over a fifth of that in machinery. So, and the chart probably confirms our preconception that the main players are the US and China, followed by Japan, and we can see that South Korea, in this case, is the fourth largest. And again, here's the same picture with the 5-year growths added. As we did before, let's have a look at the growth curves for the four largest markets. So quite a steep falling growth in South Korea and some decline in the others, but nevertheless staying above 5% year-on-year growth out to 2019. And let's do the same breakdown into subsectors that we did for machinery. So transportation just breaks down into these four subsectors, and I've included the growth on here straight away, as you can see. So here we see why South Korea is in the main countries with its big shipbuilding industry. So, and building of ships and boats is the largest part of the transportation sector in terms of worldwide spend on technical applications. The manufacture of other transportation equipment is easily second, and as with the other machinery sectors that we looked at before, this contains a number of activities. But the shipbuilding sector, putting some numbers on there, that Shipitech application targets, accounts for about 270 million of the overall $575 million, growing to just over $350 million by 2019. So one other thing on here is that with the trend towards life cycle management, we might even be able to include a proposition to address a bit of the repair and maintenance subsector, although it is small. But I'll make a note to ask the APAC regional manager about that. So let's delve into the shipbuilding market in the top 4 countries. Starting with Shipitech's home market in South Korea, 2014 spending on technical applications in shipbuilding is about $36 million. And we can see that technical application spending by the other transportation sectors is very low, including that one that we thought was large, the manufacture of other transportation equipment. So we'll look at the US. At $94 million US, easily the largest single market for spending on tech apps in shipbuilding. So establishing the application in the US market is going to be important if we decide to go with Shipitech. Interestingly, the spend here as well in the other transportation equipment subsector is also significantly lower. Here's the picture in Japan. As expected, shipbuilding, largest sector at about $36 million. So the top 3, South Korea, the US and Japan, currently represent over 60% of tech app spending in shipbuilding. Interesting that also in Japan, the other transportation equipment sector is again much lower. Because on the worldwide picture, if you recall, that other transportation sector was close to the same size as shipbuilding. But we haven't seen that in South Korea, the US or Japan. So where is it? Well, if we look at China, here it is. China represents about half the world's spend on technical applications in that other transportation equipment subsector. And it's also got a pretty good market in the shipbuilding subsector that we're interested in for Shipitech, spending around $24 million on technical applications in 2014, but with good growth to around 35 million by 2019. But having said that, there's something a bit odd about it, because in terms of tech app spend, that seems low compared to the 36 million in each of South Korea and Japan, and especially the 94 million in the US, because we know that China is the world's biggest producer of commercial ships. And I'll come back to that point in a minute. So the top 4 countries give us a total spending on technical applications in shipbuilding of, well, let's see, US 94 million, South Korea 36 million, Japan 36 million, and China 24 million, so 190 million in total. The worldwide spend is about 266 million, so where's the other 76 million? Well, as I did with the machinery sector, I've run a filter to find the next tier countries for shipbuilding tech app spend. And what I get is Norway 12 million, UK 10, Russia 6, Germany 6, Netherlands 5, and India 5. And here are the charts that show the growths as well, as we did for the machinery sectors earlier. Now, a few moments ago, I noted that there was something that seems out of line with respect to spend on technical applications in shipbuilding in China. The shipbuilding sectors in the other big 3 are all spending significantly more on technical applications, despite China having the largest output. So I think I really should make sure I know the answer to the question about that, because our management team is bound to ask it, given the importance of China. So in looking for the answer, I'm going to turn to the Employment Observatory that Christine talked about. And I'm going to start with a look at the number of people employed in shipbuilding by country. So this is total employment, and we can see that the number of people employed in shipbuilding in China far outstrips that in the other countries. So what's the explanation for the lower spending on technical applications? It might be that the spend per engineer is much lower due to cheaper software. and even China itself acknowledges that piracy rates are high. But those factors would have to be huge to rationalise the spending difference that we've seen. So let's focus on the professions that we would normally associate with the use of technical applications. There are a number, of course, but if we focus on professional engineers as the main one for simplicity, it will give us a guide. So we can see straight away that the disparity between the numbers of engineers in China and the other main shipbuilding countries gives us a clear rationale for the difference in spending on technical applications. And in fact, employment numbers often provide really useful insights into market characteristics and are therefore a really valuable additional guide to market potential. So, we've investigated the overall size of the worldwide market for tech apps in the shipbuilding subsector of the transportation industry, and we found it to be a little over $266 million in 2014, with a projected growth to just over $350 million in 2019. We've seen that over 70% of this market is in the big four countries, with another 15% in, if I may call it Europe, including Norway and Russia, in sort of expanded Europe. As with the Machinisoft expansion opportunities, the US is key to achieving the growth that we would like to get. We can probably address the US from our own offices and APAC from Shipitech's existing base in South Korea, although not ideally placed for China. We need to look at that, and we probably need to boost our presence in Europe. What we could do also is look at how to provide an application to a bigger proportion of workers in the Chinese shipbuilding industry. That looks like something of a major opportunity. And we also saw that there might be opportunities in service and overhaul. So, the technical application spending in Machinisoft's core lifting and handling machinery market was just over 180 million, growing to 250 million by 2019. If the adjacent sectors can be addressed, market opportunity would double. And the geographic distribution of the market means that we would ideally boost our presence in the US and APAC, mainly China. For Shipitech, the technical application spending in shipbuilding is 260 million plus, growing to 350 million plus by 2019. Here the market concentration is greater, that is, there is a greater share in the main countries, and success will certainly require market penetration in the US and, if possible, Europe. There's also a potential market opportunity if the application can be made useful to a wider community of workers, especially in China. So I've got some numbers, and while there will of course be a lot of further research and analysis involved in a project like this, by using 2 of the observatory data sets for 20 minutes or so, we've achieved some pretty sound quantified views that give us an initial insight into the scale of the opportunity for each of these potential acquisitions. And we've also uncovered a number of important insights as to what it might take to maximise the potential in terms of value proposition, and even some early thoughts on geographic sales focus and possible product needs. Of course, there are many things to consider, as Christine said at the start, and this kind of analysis usually leads to more questions and a deeper dive into specific areas of the data. So I'm going to submit this information to the management team and await the next step. So I'll hand back to Christine.
Thanks, Tony. Well, that analysis should certainly have provided enough evidence to drive the next steps in this acquisition decision. Now we do have a couple of questions that it would be good to address, but we've just come to the end of our 30 minutes allocated time. If you do have to drop off the call, then that's absolutely fine, and I'd just like to thank you for attending and hope that maybe we'll welcome you back to a future webinar. But for those of you that can stay on, we'll pick up those questions. So the first question is about the planning process itself. Tony, you said that market numbers are not enough for this decision. Can you elaborate?
I think we both said that, but I'll certainly have a go. Yeah. So Well, I'm sure that you wouldn't be surprised to hear us say that a good set of multi-perspective numbers provides an invaluable assessment of a market opportunity. But having said that, we would certainly agree that they're only part of the story. I mean, when you're looking at any sort of new business opportunity, whether it's a new geography, a new product capability, new vertical markets, or whatever, it's key to understand what decision makers really want and need, as well as how much they'll buy and indeed how much they're going to pay for it. Then you need to look at how your proposition compares with the competition, and perhaps, as with Machinisoft in our financial case study, whether there are product developments that will expand the opportunity. Then there's the channel to market issue. I mean, that might include direct as well as resellers or even online distribution. And then, of course, and maybe it should be at the top of the list, there are all sorts of cultural considerations like the team fit with our organisation and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of qualitative information needed to fill in the framework provided by the market numbers, so as to give the complete picture. But I think that the numbers do at least provide a solid foundation for the rest of the analysis. That's why we tend to use the phrase evidence-based business planning. And in fact, there's a lot more that you can do with them. So, for example, you might want a quantitative view of competitor presence in the target markets, and it might be important to gain a view of the penetration of complementary applications. Well, what I mean by that is, say our application is an add-on that's closely integrated with a major application, we might want to look at the market share of the major players to see what opportunities are opened up if we can integrate with their systems. So just a simple example for Shipitech, for example, might be if the application is integrated with Intergraph's ship design applications, that's one thing, but we might make the opportunity much bigger if it was integrated with Aviva's as well. And we might like to get a quantitative view of what that looks like. So, sorry, Christine, I've rambled on a bit there, but the complete picture certainly requires a solid quantitative analysis combined with consideration of a wide range of qualitative factors, I think I'd say.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, good. Yeah. The next question we've got is about the actual figures. Your figures showed growth slowing, but still high in China. But isn't there a lot of uncertainty about China right now? So can you talk to that one?
Thanks for that one. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge topic, of course, especially in today's global economy. As Christine said in her introduction, we put together growth forecasts from a large range of sources, and one group of those sources is indeed official economic forecasts. So a lot of countries have statistics offices. We use material from the World Bank, OECD, IMF, UN, and as well as that, some proprietary sources, so a whole range of views on economic outlook. But we're not really economic forecasters, although I think I might say that we would do it better than a majority of economists out there. But what we are doing, as Christine showed, is using a wide range of economic forecasts to generate a best fit view of predicted economic growth. Then we use that as one of the inputs to our models, these models that handle the way that technical application sales respond to economic growth. But I would stress it's just one input. The models also have other vital inputs like data direct from vendors and bottom-up in-country research on spending in industry sectors, so that each of the inputs is adapting and conditioning the others to generate the best overall view and bring a real picture. So the way that the observatories are mutually reinforcing and balancing, what Christine called the refined, constrained, converge processes, means that this drive for consistency helps to really ground the numbers and give us a realistic view. So for a simple example of that kind of process, at the highest level, for example, the spending on technical applications by all industry sectors in a region, we would expect to equal the total vendor plus channel revenues for that region. I think that there's one other point I'd make, which is that the growth in spending on technical applications does tend to outstrip economic growth. And the basis for that we attribute to the fact that investment in technical applications supports a wide range of business agendas. So whether it's wanting to grow through new product development, coordinate product development activities spread around a supply chain, or even just increase efficiency and reduce costs. These are all agendas that tech apps support. So, yeah.
Good, thanks. Thank you. I hope that one addresses that one somewhat. There's one more just to pick up, and we may as well finish that off now, because someone has asked about their numbers on, you talked about numbers on competitive activities. Can you talk about market share?
Sorry, in the previous question I mentioned that, didn't I? Yeah. Well, we do maintain a lot of information about the revenues attributable to a long list of technical applications products, and these data are held in the data set that Christine showed earlier called the Product Observatory. So in there you can find revenues for a given product or set of selected products by region with the same growth horizon that we've been using in the case study today. And we've also got a technique for combining the product revenue data in that Product Observatory data set with spending by industry information in the industry data, the industry observatory that we were using earlier, to give us estimates of revenues by product or provider by industry. So using those techniques, you can get a pretty good quantitative picture of the competitive landscape that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we really should draw things to a close now. I think we've covered everything we set out to do, so all it remains is for me to say a final thank you for taking the time to join the session today, and we look forward to welcoming you to a future webinar. Thank you.